Jen,
Jen,
Blair
is
Witch
that you?
Project is a movie that came out when you were 3 years old.
I was not 3. I was in college.
Whatever.
I mean, I appreciate
Well,
the
there's Jim.
compliments.
Wow, it worked.
It worked. Hello.
Holy
How are you,
shit.
Jim?
I'm excited. And I even got a fake background. Look.
Oh,
That tells me that's not fake.
you did it all by
it's my back
yourself.
porch. Because you were
You're a
asking
big
me.
boy now.
What?
Well, thanks, Jim, for coming on the call. I appreciate it. We're just
I
gonna
like
have
this. I'm gonna if I'm dodging a question, I'll do that. You can see the tap handles.
I don't believe
if you go
that's
off
hard.
camera, is that off the record?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go on mute and drop myself out of this.
Thanks.
All right.
All right. Well, Jim, thanks for being with us. I've got Jen Litz-Kirk here, and we just thought we'd ask you a few questions for our readers. And first of all, we want to know, or I want to know.
I thought this was for the people who subscribe who don't know how to read.
I mean, that's pretty much half of them. Yeah. So, or don't like to read.
The smart half.
Yeah, right. Well, that's why we keep ours so short with big letters. You know, I'm wondering, how does Jim cook sequester? I mean, where are you? What have you been doing? And is your wife tired of you? These are the kinds of things that people want to know.
Yeah, I'm sure they want to know. No, I'm at home here in Boston. It sucks. I'm going a little stir crazy. This is the longest time in at least 40 years that I haven't been on the road. I mean, we shut down pretty early. So like 6 weeks ago, it's been 1978 since I've had 6 weeks of not getting on at least one airplane. So that part's a little bizarre. And my wife is working just as hard as I am. So we're in each other's way and pissing each other off all the time.
I would imagine, because you're kind of like me. You like being out in the trade, interacting with people. I'm climbing the walls. This is like you. This is the first time in 20 years that I haven't been on a plane. And you know, is there anything different that you've discovered about yourself or the company that you maybe wouldn't have discovered if this hadn't happened?
Well, I've discovered what my wife looks like. I'd forgotten that. And I don't know, just, you know, I mean, this has nothing to do with beer business, but I've been taking long walks and I've discovered it's kind of an interesting historical neighborhood that I live in. So yes, that's about it. Otherwise, I've discovered how bad it sucks and how good it was, you know, to be on planes and seeing people and being in the trade, and how much I miss it.
Yeah, me too. Do you find you drink as much at home or not as much?
It's about the same. I mean, it's 4 o'clock. I waited to have a beer with you and Jen. So this is my first beer of the day.
Okay, so you're drinking much less.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jen, what questions do you have for Jim?
Well, one of them was a fun quarantine question, which was if you wear your Sam Adams uniform in quarantine, and apparently I think I see it. So
Yeah, there it is.
there you go.
But I own like 30 of these, so I haven't had to do my laundry in 6 weeks.
There you go. That's nice. Oh, but I mean, obviously you guys just had your earnings call yesterday. Another great pulling the rabbit out of the hat with depletions up 36%. And that was, you know, 8th straight consecutive quarter of double-digit growth. Lots of it due to seltzer. You know, we've seen crazy share of seltzer in the last couple of weeks. It got to like 8, I think, in the last week or two of beer. Do you think we could get to 10 share of seltzer this year? Do you think we keep going from 8, or will it kind of bounce around?
Well, you know, obviously at some point it's going to slow down. But we view it as having continued running room. Like you said, it's like 8% of dollars now, you know, in March on a big growth curve. So absolutely it could get to 10% of the off-premise this year. Yeah. But there is no on-premise right now. And yeah, I think that's probably correct. I mean, it's now got, you know, big brands in it like, you know, Natty Light, Bud Light, Corona. So there's, elephants are getting into the swimming pool too. But it's certainly been very interesting that for years now, Truly and White Claw have had between 75 and 82% of the category, for like 3 years. Even though there's been a lot of turmoil and change, that's been a steady thing. So in some ways, the category, when you've got strong brands that are developing consumer loyalty and are growth-oriented, aggressive, willing to drive the category, and then you've got other brands coming in from beer, the Bud Light, Natty Light, and Corona, that are beer brands extending. So that probably brings more drinkers in because they see a familiar beer brand.
Right.
I have a theory. I have a theory on that. One of the very few silver linings of this crisis is I think it actually helped seltzer, particular because I think the college kids came home and stayed after spring break, and they taught their parents how to drink seltzer. I think trial increased, and because with unemployment just skyrocketing, we haven't seen trading down like we saw in 2008, 2009, at least yet. It might be early days. But I'm surprised at the stickiness of Truly and White Claw's share, given that we've had all these new entrants. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, well, this is the fourth year. We launched Truly in March of 2016. I think White Claw came in a month or two later. And so it's been 4 years to build really strong brands. And, both Mark Anthony and Boston Beer are, high quality companies that do things right, that are growth oriented, that are, very retailer and distributor oriented. So I think that foundation of 4 years has been pretty steady.
Yeah.
Would you all, and you talked about this briefly yesterday on the call, but there will be obviously a lot of craft brewers available. Unfortunately, you guys said you might just look at those opportunities in terms of capacity, but what you really need is canning capacity. And craft brewers tend not to have that. But are you interested at all in brands, maybe even a seltzer brand?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know what seltzer brand we would want to be interested in when, two competitors have 75, 80% of the category. You throw in Anheuser-Busch and, they've got 10 to 15%. So you're accounting for over 90% of the category. After that, it's kind of, seven dwarfs after that.
Yeah. Well,
so you've got the Snow Whites, and don't think I wouldn't see anything there.
Yeah.
Well, and you've always said that there's negative synergies just to get the distributor alignment. And, you made an exception with Dogfish Head because that was a special case. You not only bought the brands, but you bought the Calagionis, right? And there's value there. Did you?
Yeah.
Has the integration on the distributor level gone better or worse than you anticipated? Or hard? Let's put it,
I think it's
easier
gone,
or harder?
It probably, there weren't a lot of surprises, but I've always known that it's not easy, and distributors really have to do it when they want to do it. But in general, there's a lot of goodwill among distributors. They're generally on one side of a deal 1 year and another side of a deal on another. And so after all the positioning and the sort of bargaining is done, it's generally been a win-win. It's gone a little bit faster, actually, than we thought. We thought we'd get to 80% by the end of the year. We're at 78% now, with a couple of deals to close. So we may be as high as 85%. And then there's always, a few guys who hold out. I mean, there's still Miller Coors distributors that don't want to give up Stella. So
Yeah.
you're always going to have, guys that just want to piss their competitor off for one reason or another. And as a supplier, you learn to live with that. But in general, just common sense and common decency has prevailed, as you would expect among the distributor community.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that 80 to 90%. And then there's always the Stella distributors, which
Yeah.
that does crack me up, because it is just a stick it to you, stick it in the eye. They love being an AB distributor. They love to say that, I'm an AB distributor.
Yeah, going to the meetings and not being able to eat this.
But has the crisis had any effect on deal flow at the distributor level, or does it? I guess that doesn't really matter, because the valuations is what I'm talking about. I guess long term the valuations really haven't changed. This is kind of a blip.
We haven't seen any change in valuation, but like I said, we were like 78% kind of going into this. So the deals that are closing now are deals that have been in the works for 6 months.
Right. So, let's talk about the industry. The biggest question to me, number one question, and it has been for a couple of weeks, is with on-premise shut down, and I think we have to presume that most of the country is going to continue to be shut down for at least another couple of months. Is off-premise big enough to offset those losses? And to me, I think the answer is no. What do you think? Let's talk about the full year, calendar year.
Yeah, my gut tells me you're right, Harry. I mean, it's hard to tell because we had this big blip of pantry loading, but if almost 20% of our industry kind of goes away, it's just hard to get those occasions back at home. So so far the numbers have been just fine, but I tend to agree with you that a healthy on-premise business is crucial to the success of all of us in the beer industry. And I don't think it's just going to come back like it was. Not this year anyway.
Right. I don't see people crowding into stadiums or bars, or, it just doesn't. I agree. Jen, what do you got?
Yeah, well, so obviously, the off-premise is where it's at for the foreseeable future. And in terms of hot products that are going through the off-premise, we spoke earlier this year, and I was trying to pry out of you when the Dogfish Head Distillery would have enough capacity to maybe bring some of those products to your distributors more widely nationally. Has COVID impeded that at all? Can we see?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're making hand sanitizer.
Right.
So, yes, we've, Sam mobilized very quickly to do that. I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. Really a typical, Dogfish Head, off-centered, unexpected, oh my gosh, they're doing what kind of move, but it was the right thing to do. But, we do look longer term to see what we can do with that distillery. As you know, we've always thought of our business as, stuff that you can make in a brewery and that goes through the beer wholesaler network. And something like maybe 70% of our volume goes through wholesalers that can sell canned cocktails, but 30% doesn't. Though we do have, some beer wholesalers who are also wine and spirits wholesalers. So it gets more complicated. The channels get more complicated, but we've been very aggressive at Boston Beer, sort of pushing boundaries and exploring, messy, complicated opportunities. And Sam is certainly as innovative and inventive and half crazy ass as anybody in this business. So, that is something that we're looking very seriously at.
Well, I've actually tried the hand sanitizer. It tastes great. You know, if you're, you know,
Oh, good.
if you're desperate enough for a drink, it's not bad. A little
No,
aloe.
just don't move on to the rubbing alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well,
But
yeah,
I
you know, one of the things that pisses me off is that Sam and I are the exact same age. And look at me, Jim. Look at me. Then look at Sam.
I don't want
Exact
to. I'm
same
averting my eyes.
Well, that's because you drink hand sanitizer, Harry. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But I wanted, I don't know what you could disclose about it, but I wanted to hear a little bit about, you know, Dogfish in general trajectory, because, you know, it wasn't really covered on the call yesterday. Do they have more exposure to, you know, obviously they do have more exposure to the on-premise. So is there danger for the trends later in the year, or anything you could share on that?
Yeah, they're like Sam Adams and Angry Orchard, which are, you know, their exposure to the off-premise and on-premise, it follows the craft beer pattern. So all three of those over-index to on-premise and have been hurt, you know, pretty badly. I mean, we've had weeks where, you know, I'm looking at our keg volume and relative to last year, and I would have been happy if it went to zero. It went to negative because of everything we're bringing back.
Oh,
so
right. Yeah.
It's worse than disappeared. It disappeared and then it boomeranged and it whacked us in the ass. So that's, you know, luckily, and I think it's one of the reasons Sam wanted to join forces with Boston Beer. We have built a portfolio that is very resilient, that is flexible and can adapt and continue to generate significant growth, even with something semi-catastrophic like, you know, the zombie apocalypse of on-premise business today.
Right.
Well, and have you repurposed, I guess, your on-premise, I guess your people are on-premise and off-premise, or have you had to repurpose them to off-premise?
Generally, they're trained to do both, but we do have some who specialize in one versus another. You know, our salespeople have been working from home. So we've had to navigate that reality of not being able to make retail calls, and it's not a time when retailers, you know, really want to see somebody unless they're gonna, you know, build a display or fill a shelf.
Right.
So, but we've been, you know, maintaining relationships with even the on-premise chains, who I think will probably, you know, come back first because they have the strongest financial resources and staying power. So, you know, we have been working with them to figure out, well, what are we going to do when you guys our retailers open up again?
Yeah, they can spread their tables out. Well, I guess Ruth's Chris will be the first to come out since they got $10 million of the bailout. I think.
Did they take a lot of grief for that?
Oh, I know. Good Lord. Well, you know, whatever. Well, what else, Jen? I don't want to keep Jen too long. We want to keep these about 20 minutes. So, Jen, you got any closing?
Yeah, one more quickie. Maybe I missed this yesterday, but, you know, for marketing, I know you guys delayed some of your planned programming, and you've been doing a lot of restaurant relief, restaurant strong messaging, which obviously I think is perfect for the time. But when do you guys think you'll return to more regular messaging?
You know, that's sort of a day by day, week by week reading of the national mood. If I had to guess now, I'm thinking, you know, June, but, you know, it's hard to know. I mean, for a lot of the country, it's springtime. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of there's a little bit of mood shift that happens as you head into summer. I'm hoping that when things get open, you know, and we all got to just pray that there's not a you know, a second wave. So we're like everybody, just trying to read the tea leaves of the national mood.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I hope that you're staying well, and please give your poor dear long-suffering wife my regards. And hope just stay out of her way. That's all the advice I can give you. So.
I'm trying. I usually hide under my desk, but she let me crawl out so I could talk to you guys.
All right, great. Well, cheers, Jim. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
You too. Bye now. Bye, Jen.
Bye.
Bye.